Welcome to Faith Vocals. My name is Faith. I'm working on a new technique for making these videos. My previous video was the first time that I've tried this technique, and I actually got some time to look at the movie I was talking about for that one, so I kind of knew what I wanted to say. The movie that we're looking at today is The Polar Express, and I've watched it many times over. I enjoy watching it, but I haven't actually analyzed it like I intend to do over the course of this video. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to find in this movie yet. So we'll see, we'll get into it. We'll see where this exploration goes. This process will go over several days. So this outfit is going to change over the course of this video, maybe this hairstyle too, depending on how I feel. So going into the movie, I'm trying to get a sense of our main character, of who we're dealing with. The movie does its best to show us that this little boy, who never gets a name in the movie, a lot of the characters in the movie go unnamed. I think we know his sister's name, Sarah. We, of course, know Santa Claus's name. We know the name of a little boy named Billy. I think those are the only names that we learn in the movie, unless you want to count Stephen, who's a little boy who gets in trouble right on Christmas Eve, and the elves are discussing him. But those are the only names I can think of through the movie. So our main character in the credits, his name is Hero Boy. So I'm trying to get a sense of who this Hero Boy is and what he's all about. And the first scenes do a really good job of showing us that he doubts Santa's existence. He lives in a family, probably a typical American family, where they raise their kids to believe in Santa Claus. And now he's seeing encyclopedia articles saying that the North Pole is devoid of life, clippings that show signs of people being disillusioned by Santa. It seems like all of the evidence that he has for Santa is evidence against Santa. So definitely we can see what the initial conflict of the movie is. And then the hook of the movie, of course, is when this mysterious train shows up in his front yard, and he's got to figure out what to do with it. I'm thinking, if you're a kid, no matter what kind of vehicle an adult comes up to you in, if the adult is telling you to climb in and you don't know who they are, you're probably good to behave like this boy, where at first he shakes his head and he refuses to get off the train. Seems like a smart move to me. But eventually his curiosity catches up to him and he runs and jumps aboard the train. So as I'm looking at this movie, this looks like the inciting incident to me. This is why the story gets going. There would be no story unless he jumped on this train. And now as we get a little bit further into the story, the conductor, starts to ask for tickets. And the boy searches in his pocket, which is freshly broken from trying to grab his house coat on the way to see this train. So he feels around, can't find anything but a hole in that pocket. So the conductor says, "Try your other pocket." And as he reaches into that pocket, mysteriously, this ticket is lying in that pocket. And so he pulls it out and gets it punched by the conductor. But interestingly, this moment where the ticket is produced magically comes at exactly the mark of the first eighth of the movie. So I talked a lot about how I see the movie divided into 8 sections in my previous movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I'll try to save time and not explain so much about that in this video. So if you'd like to see more about that, I'd suggest you check out my previous video on Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. But this first 8th mark is very important. Usually I associate this with the inciting incident, which, as I've said, looks to me like him jumping on the train. So now this incident is coming up later. I think this is what's known as the key event, which really identifies the main character with the story. Sometimes an incident happens to you, it starts your story, but you don't know what's going on. You don't know how you're associated with what's happening to you. And then there's, in these stories, there's a key event that ties you to your story. So here's this boy. This train magically appeared in his front yard. He has no idea why. He gets aboard the train just because he's curious, and then he discovers he's got a ticket all for himself to ride this train. And where did that ticket come from? Because everything he knows about Santa up to this point, all of the evidence he has, shows him that Santa Claus doesn't exist. And now he has a physical object. Physical. It's evidence of something. Don't know what, but it wasn't there in his pocket before. He doesn't know how it got in his pocket. His pocket was empty before he got on the train, and now he's got a ticket in that pocket that came from somewhere. It's evidence of something. Where is this evidence going to lead? It's evidence he belongs on the train. So each of these tickets gets punched with 2 letters. Different kids have different letters. That's interesting. Another boy comes on the train. He's called Lonely Boy in the credits. And he winds up sitting in a car by himself. There's another character who winds up being one of the 3 major characters. So our main character is Hero Boy. There's Lonely Boy. And there's Hero Girl, who during a scene where the children get hot chocolate, best scene in the movie, she saves some hot chocolate for Lonely Boy, who is in another car. So he doesn't have the same opportunity that the other children do to get this beverage. She's about to take it over, and when the children question whether she really ought to do that, she freezes. So, okay, we're learning that she has some insecurities about her ability to make decisions. And then the conductor comes and helps her to get the chocolate to Lonely Boy. So I highlight that because I want to focus on her character as it's being revealed. It's also revealed that the conductor forgot to punch her ticket. There's an exciting scene about it being lost and recovered, but because it's gone for a little while, the conductor takes Hero Girl toward the back of the train, and the kids are concerned that she's going to get thrown off because she doesn't have her ticket. So Hero Boy, once he has the ticket in hand, goes up to the top of the train and sees the conductor and the girl walking along the top of the train toward the engine. The snow flurry eventually covers up all trace of them, and Hero Boy tries to make his way across the top of the train also after them. So that brings us to the next significant moment, the first quarter of the movie. This is where this is the first plot point, and it's where the main character crosses from the normal world that they used to live in to an abnormal world, an unusual world. This is where he's going to start learning the lessons he needs to learn in order to solve the movie, essentially. But it's weird because he's on the magic train and he's already turned over his magic ticket. So isn't he already in the abnormal world? How is he supposed to, what kind of world is he supposed to cross over into now? So I'm looking in the movie trying to figure out what it is that this transition represents. What is this thing that I'm missing? And he stumbles upon this hobo who apparently is living on the train. So right here at this first plot point, he's encountering this new character. Best character in the movie, by the way. This is my favorite character in the whole movie. Such a colorful character. What is this character about? Because this is apparently a significant moment in the movie. This character seems to represent whatever this transition is that the boy is making from the normal world to the abnormal world. So let's listen to some of what this character says and see what we can find out about him.
Not that I have much use for those tickets. I ride for free. Oh, yeah. I hop aboard this rattler anytime I feels like it. I own this train. Oh, yeah. It's like I'm the king of this train. Yeah, the king of the Polex. In fact, I am the king of the North Pole! Now, where's my map? Sit. Take a load of it.
What about, Santa?
Santa?
Isn't he the king of the North Pole?
You mean this guy? What exactly is your persuasion on the big man, since you brought him up?
Well, I want to believe. But
You don't want to be bamboozled. You don't want to be led down the primrose path. You don't want to be conned or duped. Have the wool pulled over your eyes. Hoodwinked. You don't want to be taken for a ride. Railroaded. Seeing is believing. Am I right?
but what about this train?
What about it?
We're all really going to the North Pole, aren't we?
Aren't we?
Are you saying that this is all just a dream?
You said it, kid. Not me. So, let's go find that girl. One other thing. Do you believe in ghosts? Interesting.
This character has been a mystery to me in all the years that I've owned and watched this video. He has an evasive way of expressing himself that leaves you asking questions. Does he really think he's the king of the North Pole? Does he doubt Santa's existence? He's asking the boy all of these questions. He's not really giving a lot of information about himself other than his opening where he talks about tickets and his relationship with the train. Yet he seems personally aware of the boy's doubts to a surprising level. He makes reference to a scene in which only the boy would know his reaction to this experience he had of Santa Claus. When the boy asks if he's saying if the whole experience with the Polar Express is a dream, he replies, "You said it, kid." Which makes me wonder if he doesn't have a closer relationship with this boy than an incidental meeting on top of the train. Of course, the benefit of a questioning style of communication is that you're never the one who is suggesting the answer. It's always the other person. The last thing I notice about him, you can't miss it, is the strong implication that he is some sort of spirit. Like I mentioned in part 2 of my analysis of the Legend of the Guardians movie, as a Christian, I want to be aware of a supernatural spiritual influence in the world around me. In this case, in this movie, I've got to take it in context. I think the hobo is getting tied in with the sense of the spiritual just because that's not something that many skeptics actually believe in. If the boy doesn't believe in Santa Claus, it makes sense he doesn't believe in ghosts. And yet there's a strong implication that this man is something the boy does not believe in. So we're searching this scene for some sort of transition that the boy makes from one world to another, or from one way of looking at the world to another. We're watching for him to go from something normal to something abnormal. There's 2 aspects about this scene where that could be happening. First, in this scene, he is held accountable for his disbelief in Santa in a kind of personal way. Again, the hobo gives an example of his disbelief, which no one else could know about. The boy was held accountable for his disbelief in Santa when he first got on the train. The conductor mentions different evidences that he is disbelieving in Santa, but he is never directly told that he doesn't believe in Santa. In this conversation with the hobo, he is made to admit that he doesn't believe in Santa. The second aspect that could be a transition here is when the hobo asks him whether or not he believes in ghosts, and then vanishes into the dark in a way that suggests he's not just going beyond visibility. It suggests that he's actually vanishing, ghost-like. And the boy's reaction to this is to believe that he is dreaming. He tries a couple times to wake himself up without success. The hobo returns, and in the next scene, the boy has to put his faith in this entity who couldn't possibly exist. Is that possibly the transition into the next world? I feel like it comes a little bit late. It could be late, but I feel like the moment of transition would be when he is realizing that he's probably speaking to a ghost. And then I think he is trying to cling to the normal world as he tries to wake himself up. And then when that's not successful, he steps into the abnormal world. And I'm guessing that he is fully transitioned to the abnormal world when we see him trusting in this ghost. He sits on the ghost's shoulders. He's swung around by the ghost's ski stick. He rides on the ghost's skis. And it's because he's relying in this thing that should not exist that his life is saved. He finds Hero Girl in the engine. She's safe and sound. No one was ever going to throw her off the train. The grown-ups have gone to change a light in the front of the train, and she's left in charge of driving it. When it becomes necessary to stop the train quickly to avoid hitting something on the tracks, she points out the brake to Hero Boy, but he asks,
"Are you sure? Are you sure?"
Fortunately, he chooses to believe Hero Girl rather than follow his own doubt. The pinch point passes quickly, but we do find out that Christmas apparently depends on this train getting to its destination. After that, there's quite a bit of peril in the next couple scenes, which puts Hero Girl, the conductor, and Hero Boy at risk of falling off the train until the hobo rescues them. By now, we're well beyond the realm of implication when it comes to his ghosthood. The conductor is not aware of who saved them, but he does later tell the story of how he was rescued previously on the train.
Years ago, on my first Christmas Eve run, I was up on the roof making my rounds when I slipped on the ice myself. I reached out for a hand iron, but it broke off. I slid and fell, and yet I did not fall off this train.
Someone saved you?
Or something.
An angel.
Maybe.
Wait! Well, what did he look like? Did you see him?
No, sir. But sometimes seeing is believing. And sometimes the most real things in the world are the things we can't see.
I think this is the midpoint, even though it does come a little bit early. Right at the very center of the movie, we get a musical number where we find out that Lonely Boy, the kid who came aboard the train and sat by himself, hasn't had a good experience of Christmas and so doesn't trust Santa to deliver when it comes to his family's holiday. It's kind of nice to know Lonely Boy's backstory, but it doesn't really hit home the way the midpoint usually does. The midpoint is usually where the main character comes to terms with the truth and often has a moment as if they're looking in the mirror, and which does follow the point that I think is the midpoint here. Here, the conductor gives a kernel of truth that actually stands in stark opposition to what the hobo told the boy previously, that seeing is believing. In the next scene, Hero Boy and Hero Girl are being led through a car full of old toys, and the conductor explains that Santa Claus plans to recycle these toys. Hero Boy comes face to face with a puppet of Ebenezer Scrooge, which is being handled by the hobo, who accuses Hero Boy of being Ebenezer Scrooge because he doesn't believe in the spirit of Christmas. This, I think, is Hero Boy's look in the mirror moment. Hero Boy might get a second look in the mirror moment. As soon as he steps out of the toy car, he is blocked by Know-It-All, who starts recounting the perilous events that happened before, but Know-It-All has his own spin on what's happened.
Hey, you missed it. We rode down some really sharp hills, and then we were on what looked like a frozen lake, but I know it was just an optical illusion caused by moonlight and atmosphere. He said the train was actually on the ice, but I said that was impossible, because you can't put a train track. Hey, where are you going now?
So this moment is played humorously, since know-it-all clearly doesn't know anything, specifically because he thinks he knows so much. But it's also interesting that right here at the middle of the movie, where we're expecting Hero Boy to have a look at himself and assess who he is and where he's coming from, just after he's been very roughly accused of his doubts, he is also coming face to face with what is essentially a version of him. He knows better than to believe in Santa Claus, and yet he finds himself on the Polar Express on his way to the North Pole. We have the musical number that I mentioned before, and then the conductor comes upon the three main kids, Hero Boy, Hero Girl, and Lonely Boy, as they're looking out toward the back of the train, and he points out the North Pole, this kind of city, a hill kind of lights off at the horizon, at the edge of the Arctic snows. And honestly, I see an element of the midpoint here. And I'll admit I'm enough of an amateur at this that it's hard for me to tell exactly where the midpoint should be. I don't think it's at the very middle of the movie while the song's going on, because the song is not revealing anything that is going to help Hero Boy to overcome his doubts about Santa. But I'm seeing a truth given to him, a significant truth given to him before the midpoint. He has to come face to face with versions of himself before the midpoint, and now just after the midpoint he is seeing the North Pole, which the encyclopedia told him was devoid of life, and yet you can see electric lights off in the distance. There's clearly life out there. Now it could be that this whole segment is actually the midpoint and it's just strung out over several scenes. I don't know. You'd have to ask someone who actually has written stories about whether that's the case or not. I am seeing elements of the midpoint throughout this section. The train makes its way into the North Pole, this Christmassy style city, and yet there is no actual sign of life. There's buildings, there's light bulbs, but there are no elves. Where are the elves, the children ask. And the conductor explains that they are in the center of the city. So I think the progression here is interesting. The boy at the beginning of the movie had no evidence for Santa Claus. And then a train showed up in his front yard. He steps on the train and discovers he has a magic ticket. Later on, he has a conversation with someone about whether or not Santa Claus exists. And as it turns out, the person he's conversing with is a ghost, something else that he didn't believe could be possible. Now, so far, he's had no evidence that the train is actually going to the North Pole other than the conductor's testimony and the belief of the kids around him. Now he can see the North Pole. They are arriving in the city of the North Pole, but there's no elves. And so the closer he gets to the truth, there's always one other thing that could prevent him from believing. Oh, I won't believe in Santa Claus until I see some evidence for Santa Claus. Okay, yeah, there's a train. Okay, yeah, there's a magic ticket. Okay, yeah, ghosts exist, but not until I see the North Pole. Oh, here we are at the North Pole, but not until I see an elf. Oh, okay, there's elves. Not until I see Santa Claus. And actually, the story tells us right from the beginning scene that one thing he seriously fears is that he'll never hear one of Santa Claus's sleigh bells. That's what he really identifies with Santa Claus, is the sound of Santa's sleigh. The children file out of the train car and get ready to meet Santa Claus, who is going to be giving the first gift of Christmas to one of them. But Lonely Boy decides to stay on the train car. The conductor says no one is required to see Santa Claus, but Hero Boy and Hero Girl decide to go and try to convince him to join the children. He says that Christmas just never works out for him, so it's obvious he's not inclined to go. Well, as they tried to get into the car and now they're talking to him, they accidentally wind up decoupling the car from all the rest of the cars. So now they find themselves hurtling backwards through the city of the North Pole in an out-of-control train car. Thankfully, Hero Boy gets a little last-minute help from his ghost to save themselves once again, and they wind up lost in the middle of this lifeless North Pole city. But Hero Girl can hear the sounds of the sleigh bells. Hero Boy can't hear the sounds of the sleigh bells, but maybe that has something to do with the Christmas music that's playing over the loudspeakers. Hero Girl leads the children through the city, trying to find the source of these sleigh bells, because surely that's where Santa will be, and that's where everyone will be. Interestingly, she seems to hesitate just as the record, which is playing Silver Bells, starts to skip. So naturally, Hero Boy has questions about this.
Are you sure? Absolutely.
This is absolutely the worst time for her to find her confidence. Hero Boy is facing his biggest fear, which is that he'll never be able to hear Santa's sleigh bells. Apparently, Hero Girl can hear Santa's sleigh bells. Lonely Boy says he can hear Santa's sleigh bells. Hero Boy is the only one in the group who can't hear these sleigh bells. The next scene comes right at the 5/8 part of the movie. So that would be where we would expect the second pinch point. It's the scene where the elves are discussing the fate of Stephen's Christmas. Since Stephen was naughty this year, he lives off in New Jersey. He's not really present for the scene. The scene doesn't really seem to me to have the weight that I'm expecting for the movie. I would expect this scene to either impact Hero Boy or to impact Christmas as a whole. Doesn't seem to do that. Seems to affect someone we don't really care about. But I think where the pinch point is coming in, where we're feeling the weight that should be around this section, is where we're realizing that there is a chance that Hero Boy really will never hear Santa's sleigh bells. And that would be because he doesn't believe fully in Santa. His doubt, for some reason, is preventing him from being able to hear what Lonely Boy and Hero Girl are able to believe. They wind up in a pile of Santa's presents, and after some excitement, the elves finally are able to get the kids safely out of Santa's sack of presents. So the kids are back in the center of town just in time for the third plot point. And the way I think of the third plot point, usually there is a kind of a lull that comes off of the second pinch point. We're finding out possibly that Hero Boy is having trouble hearing the sleigh bells, and that was kind of always the thing that he needed to hear in order to prove that Santa Claus was really real. So what is he going to do if he can't hear those sleigh bells? Usually after that second pinch point, that's what causes things to kind of go downhill in the story. Eventually there is a lull. The lowest point of the story comes right before the third plot point. Now, some people say that that low point is actually the third plot point. I've seen other people who say that it's right after that, when the hero gets the final piece of the puzzle that they need in order to overcome the antagonistic force, which in this case is Hero Boy's doubt and Santa Claus. So that moment when everything comes together is the third plot point. So I'm willing to be flexible about what it might be. To me, it's right where those two points join. Right where the hero has faced their low moment, they don't know what they're going to do, and that transitions into knowing what they're going to do and being so committed to what they're going to do that they will pour everything they have into this solution. So there is one moment usually where these two things come together, and I think it's that transition from the low moment to the warrior moment, we'll call it, that is the third plot point. So we've seen some doubt from Hero Boy, but he hasn't really had time to process it and to get really low. But he hasn't been this close to seeing Santa Claus yet. And now we see these flying reindeer. If that isn't evidence of Santa Claus, what is? There's no sleigh bells. So let's wait and see what about the sleigh bells. And then they bring out the sleigh bells. These elves are making a big point of shaking these sleigh bells. These are the famous sleigh bells, and everyone's getting excited, but Hero Boy can't hear the sleigh bells. They're clearly shaking. Everyone's responding. Everyone's acting like they can hear the sleigh bells, but Hero Boy can't hear the sleigh bells. And then out comes Santa. And for these short little elves, they are exceptionally good at getting in the way. Hero Boy cannot see Santa Claus's face no matter how hard he tries. And it's not like they're trying to stop him. He just can't see Santa. What if he never gets to see Santa? Will he ever be able to believe that Santa Claus is real? Hero Boy starts to put two and two together. Maybe he's remembering what the conductor said, that nobody is required to see Santa Claus. Maybe the reason he can't see Santa Claus is the same reason he can't hear the sleigh bells. Maybe it's because his doubt kind of implies there's something in him that doesn't want to see, doesn't want to believe. He's able to get a hold of one of these sleigh bells, and sure enough, there is no sound coming from this sleigh bell. And then he makes an important decision.
Okay. I believe. I believe.
I want to take a moment and think about how the movie is teaching Hero Boy the lesson that he's coming to by this third plot point. Obviously, the movie wants Hero Boy to believe in Santa Claus. So what does it expect of Hero Boy? Is he supposed to make a leap of faith in order to finally believe in Santa Claus? Sort of. Not so much a leap that he needs to, from his bedroom, decide he's going to believe in Santa Claus. The story gives him a train that's actually going to take him to where his belief is going to develop. It gives him a ticket for the train out of nowhere, which to me seems like pretty hefty evidence of at least some sort of working magic. And when everyone on the train, especially the conductor, believes that Santa Claus exists, it may as well be Christmas magic. The movie gives him his own ghost. The movie takes him to the North Pole. The movie puts him in a crowd of elves. The movie explains to him how Santa Claus is able to fit all of the presents of the world on his sleigh. The movie explains to him what happens when someone is naughty on Christmas Eve. The movie shows him the sleigh bells. The movie puts Santa Claus right in front of him. The only thing it doesn't give him before he makes his decision is a face-to-face with Santa Claus. He's got to make a very tiny, like mustard seed-sized leap. I mean, he's seen the guy's coat past all of the elves. How much closer can you get to proof of Santa Claus? Maybe you'd say, well, he could have seen Santa Claus's coat in the mall, but that was not Santa Claus. No, he's had all of this other evidence that is piled on top of, right? And he's holding a bell that he cannot hear, and all he has to do is decide to make that tiny mustard seed sized leap, and suddenly he can hear the bell. And suddenly Santa Claus walks right up to him, and he gets to have a conversation with him. But even up to the point where he has to make that decision to believe, the movie is giving this kid everything he could need to make that decision. So is the movie trying to teach him to have blind faith? I don't think so. He's had all of these things that he's been able to see and hear and experience all around him. He's had the hot chocolate from the train. He's even gotten to taste the evidence. It doesn't seem to me like the message of this film is that you have to make a wide leap of faith based on nothing at all, even though the boy's ticket only says believe when the conductor finally punches it out of the way. Now, what the movie does do is it takes from the boy all of the evidence it gave him. His ticket is gone. The bell is gone. He goes home with nothing left to show for his experience. Even the hole in his pocket mends itself and gets rebroken the next morning, as if it had never been broken in the first place. So when he gets a bell under the tree from Mr. C, what is he supposed to do with that? What decision is he supposed to make about a mysterious bell that he gets given on Christmas from Mr. C? Now, the boy we've known all the way through the movie had been holding out for one piece of evidence more. He didn't believe because he saw the train. He didn't believe because he met a ghost. He didn't believe because he saw elves. It wasn't until he had the bell he couldn't hear that he finally had to get over, I'm going to call it pride, his own know-it-all spirit. No, it's not until I get this particular piece of evidence. I have to hear a sleigh bell ring before I will believe in Santa Claus. No, he didn't get that by the time he needed to make his decision. He got that immediately after he made his decision. It's like the movie is telling us, you may not get exactly the piece of evidence that you want, but look at the preponderance of evidence that you already have. Now, as an adult who was raised in a family that never taught me that Santa Claus is true, I am not going to say that this movie is trying to teach us to believe in Santa Claus. But as a Christian, I can make a connection here based on what I see in the Bible. There's a very popular verse in the middle of the Bible in Proverbs chapter 3. It's verses 5 and 6. Here they are. They say, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil." So what the Bible tells us is there are times when our own understanding will actually get in the way of us coming to the truth. The Bible teaches that God is omniscient, he knows everything, and that he's honest. He never lies. So when our own understanding can deceive us, but God will not deceive us, and he knows everything, it's better for us to put our trust in him. But the thing that interferes with that is when we are wise in our own eyes. Again, we should fear the Lord. That's a phrase in the Bible that demonstrates the level of trust we have in who God is. We should fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Sometimes life throws things at us that make evil look appealing. So that's, again, another case where we don't want to trust in our own understanding because it's going to lead us astray. Another proverb, Proverbs 22:17, tells us, "Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your heart to my knowledge. For it will be pleasant if you keep them within you, if all of them are ready on your lips. That your trust may be in the Lord. I have made them known to you today, even to you. Have I not written for you 30 sayings of counsel and knowledge, to make you know what is right and true, and that you may give a true answer to those who sent you?" Now, Proverbs says quite a lot. There's 30 sayings and more in the book of Proverbs. But I think the point of this passage is that there is a source of evidence for us that our trust may be in the Lord. And that would be the words that are in the Bible, some of which are these Proverbs that I'm looking at. The Bible has a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense to the average person. A lot of times in our culture, we would prefer to disbelieve supernatural events like miracles. And so any account of miracles and supernatural events immediately gets written off as false. I think at the very least, you should be considering how that account came to be in the first place. Investigate how it is that we got the Bible in the English language, or whatever language your Bible comes to you in. If the Holy Bible is a book of lies, then how did societies react to it as it was developed? Some people like to say that the Bible is a tool used by governments to repress their subjects. But if you do the research, you'll find that governments often were in opposition to the Bible. The Bible is a countercultural book, not just in our time, but throughout history. And if it has faced such strong opposition from governments, then how is it that it exists here today? Now, personally, I believe that it is God's will that his word remain available to people of every era. And that is why the Bible is available in multiple languages, because God has throughout history delivered the truth to us. Another evidence that may help us to trust in the Lord is creation itself, everything around us. In Romans chapter 1, we're told, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation, to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek." So this is what the Bible says about how we can be right with God. "For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith." That kind of fits in with the theme of the movie, where this boy has to grapple with how much faith he needs to put into the existence of Santa Claus. Further on it says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal men and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So what this passage tells us is that men, basically mankind, everybody, suppress the truth. The Bible says that we already know God. Anytime it's using the word they, it's talking about humanity as a whole. So that's all of us know God innately. I think the only way we can know or reason anything about anything is because we do have that innate knowledge of God. Only God makes sense of everything we have to assume in order to come to knowledge of the truth. And what this passage shows us here is that God has made it clear ever since the creation of the world who he is, his invisible attributes. So what this passage is telling us is that it is not a far leap for us to come to trust in God. In this passage in Luke 17:5 and 6, Jesus says something surprising. He was just teaching his apostles about forgiveness, and it must have been a difficult lesson for them because they said, "Lord, increase our faith." And his response is, if you had faith like a grain of mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. And if you're not familiar, a mustard seed is a very, very tiny seed, no bigger than a pinhead. So not a lot of faith at all. And this verse is kind of difficult to grasp because I think we're familiar with people who are sure that something is going to happen and then it doesn't happen for them. So obviously there's some nuance that's beyond the scope of today's video. But at the heart of what Jesus is saying is that we shouldn't expect to need great leaps of faith. The faith that God expects from us is the size of a mustard seed. So to summarize what I'm seeing in the Polar Express, the word believe gets printed on Hero Boy's ticket. And it's kind of easy to think, okay, the movie just wants us to learn to believe. Whatever, believe, without prompting, I guess, just believe. That's what the whole movie is about. I don't think that's the case. I think the movie is cautioning us against refusing to believe something that should be evident to us. Now, the framework it uses is to present enough evidence to Hero Boy that he really has no reason not to believe in Santa Claus. But then it asks him the question, are you going to let the fact that you can't hear this one bell blind you to all the other evidence that you've seen for this truth? Are you going to let the fact that you don't have a straight line from Santa Claus to this bell in your hand prevent you from believing the truth? Because Hero Boy is the type of character who will let one thing stand between him and what he ought to be believing in. I think he is wise in his own eyes, where whatever evidence is coming to him has to pass his limited knowledge before he's willing to accept it as evidence. And of course, I'm seeing this movie from a Christian perspective, so I comment on my faith through the Bible verses. But I think we all are aware that there are people out there who you can show them all the evidence there is for whatever it is that you know to be true. And yet these people do not accept that evidence. We call such people stubborn. So I guess the message that I'm seeing here in the Polar Express is don't be stubborn. And with that, let me add my final message to you. God bless you.